A very, very good evening. A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Pick and Pay. Dan Really Likes Wine on location, and what a location it is. Now, if you look behind the broad shoulders you see on screen at the moment, you might think, oh, that must be somewhere in the deep Karoo, or it looks rather wild and untamed in the middle of nowhere. Well, actually, if you look through the other camera, which we've got rigged up here, you will be looking out over Lourensford. You will see False Bay down on the horizon. And this is just a ridiculous view. Every time I think it can't get better in the winelands, you stumble on a new little corner. So why am I here today? Well, today was the first day of the ABSA Cape Epic. It kicked off this morning. It has been a brutal stage. The riders were supposed to have finished a good half an hour ago or so, and we're still seeing a few of them come in. 90 kilometers, almost 3,000 meters of climbing. It has been a very demanding test on the first day of the world's greatest mountain bike adventure. You could be riding it and you could have spent 9.5 hours on your bicycle in 40-degree heat, climbing almost 3 vertical kilometers. Or you could be doing what I'm doing, a day spent in the winelands, seeing some great people. We did stop and watch a fair bit of the cycling through the day, but what a day we've had early on this morning with Skulk, Willem-Gilbert at Taibosch, down to Pietri at Pink Valley. You might be able to hear one or two of those riders going past now. We were also out, Erica Obermeyer with her new spot. We got through to Delagraaf for wine with Stuart Taylor, as unqualified a wine drinker as there is, but great fun. Made our way out to Idiom with Ciabella Sinatla, and we're now sitting here at Lourensford in just a moment. One of the top mountain bikers in South Africa, not riding the Epic, will be joining me to talk a bit about Lourensford, the 2-decade love affair he's had with the estate, and taste some of the splendid wine for which Lourensford is so well known right around the world. So lovely show, just me and Hannes, very romantic evening, looking out over Lourensford, drinking some wine and reflecting on both his beautiful estate and his wonderful career in wine. Before we do that, though, let's have a quick look at some of the things that have been happening recently in the world of wine. Let's kick off. We've got a few things to have a quick look at. We are out in the middle of the winelands, so I'm sure those will be coming through in just a second. All right, there we go. That is inside. Yes, that's the new Bertus Besson space. I'm not sure if you can see that at the moment, but that's Bertus Besson. If you can see it, that is Clara's, his brand new spot. If you can't see it, well, it's lovely. It's an old barn down at Vergenodleur. There we go. There, myself and Bertus. That's the 813th restaurant he's opened this year. Not just one, he's got 2 at the same place. Does he ever stop? It's a charming spot. It's got a lovely sense of heritage. It is the oldest barn in the Southern Hemisphere, and it is now home to a brand new restaurant in Clara's. 5-course meal. It's a small menu. It's a much bigger wine list with not just Vergenod's own wine, but a few others as well. And it's yet another terrific culinary stopover in the sprawling foodie destination that is the wine. It's just off the N2 down in Macassar, and well worth visiting. So that is Clara's. And now that's not actually the cover model from last November's Men's Health magazine. That is Skulk Willem-Gilbert, who you'll know well on the show. Skulk Willem and I were at Taibosch, and I bring that up not just because it was a lovely morning with him, but because they are in the middle of harvest, and across the winelands, and we'll find out where he stands in a moment from Hannes, but across the winelands, most of the harvests are well underway now. Some of them are actually done, but it's been a lot later for many, many people. And that's been quite an interesting aspect to this year's harvest. How will it translate into the wines themselves? Most of the winemakers seem pretty bullish, but across the winelands, lots of hard work. And there's a real sense of energy, a real sense of activity to all of the vineyards. And that is going on at the moment. And then also a quick look. Oh, there's Eric. Isn't she wonderful? Erica Obermeyer. That is her new spot. She is down in Agri Park. She's got a small space she's been wanting for ages. First came to fame with Graham Beck, left that Franschhoek property when they stopped the still wine and just went with the bubbles in Robertson, started on her own, and what a journey since then. Young Winemaker of the Year, the new brand from Plata 2017, Red Wine of the Year in 2020, and now got her own home, and from probably May, that's going to be open by appointment for visits. Join the queue. It is going to be a long one. All right, so that is our news. We've also got a fabulous competition that has been running with the guys from Bellingham, and that is the chance to win a 5-course dinner for 4 people at Le Coin Francais. That is out in France. Darren Bardenhorst, he's a genius in the kitchen. Bellingham provided a series of vintage wine. I think we might have a quick look at that competition. We do indeed. So here it is. Your chance to go fine dining and drinking some good wine to match out in Franschhoek. This month's competition is brought to you by Bellingham, and it's the chance to head out to Le Coin Francais. That's in the heart of Franschhoek. 4 people, a 5-course tasting menu prepared by Chef Darren Bardenhorst, paired with vintage Bellingham wine. Superb food from an absolutely outstanding chef and some really good vintage Bellingham wine. And that is all yours. Simply tell us why on our social media channels. You should be the winner of this particular prize. Let us know. And 4 of you could be spending an evening at Le Coin Francais, dining fabulously and drinking wonderful wine. So there we go. That is our competition from Bellingham. And that's one prize. Well, here is your other. It's a visual feast of a mountain biker. Hannes, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Dan. Good to be here.
Oh, I wouldn't be anywhere else. We were talking in the safari truck as we made our way up here to the top of the hill. I asked you, do you ever get tired of it? And you said no, which is, it might not sound surprising, it's so beautiful, but you have been here for 20 years.
Yes, I'm well rooted here. I started off in 2003 with the very first harvest. And 20 years later, it's my 20th celebration of a harvest here. So
it's an extraordinary place. A little bit of dust in the air, all the bicycles coming through as we start off the epic. And as I look around, just to set the scene from a winemaking perspective, False Bay is just a few kilometers away. We've got the Helderberg, the back of it behind us. It's visually, it's an extraordinary place. What does it give you as a winemaker?
Well, apart from probably being the most beautiful wine estate in the world, as you can see over there, our influence from the ocean is one of my biggest advantages. We're actually a cool climate. So we're part of Appalachian Stellenbosch, but our climate is much closer to Elgin. So we're about 5 to 8 degrees cooler than the rest of the Stellenbosch region. And the reason why is we get the cool sea breeze coming in from False Bay, cooling us down, and the mountains surrounding us just keeping that cool air in. And we actually have on the top of the mountains, we have the highest rainfall in Africa, actually. 3 meters of rain per year on average, and down in the valley, 1.2 meters of rain. So we're blessed with enough water, and then obviously the cool climate.
It's a place that offers you so much clearly as a winemaker, but it'll also offer you an education over the 20 years as to exactly what works. What would have been the main lessons that Lourensford has taught you as a winemaker in these 2 decades?
Oh, well, it's been quite a learning curve on Lourensford, just understanding the climate. Because of the cooler climate, obviously our vineyards aged a bit longer, took a bit longer to get to that top quality. And we worked it out over the last 20 years, what work and what does not work on the estate. And we're at a very good point at the moment where we know what work on what sites. We're blessed with 4,000 hectares. We could plant the top 100 hectares on the vine. So we have a multiple choice of different terroirs. Up here we can put almost the whole of France in here. So up here we have Sancerre. Down at the valley bottom we have our Burgundy, Chablis, Champagne as well. Then we've got our little Rhone pockets with the Shiraz and Viognier. And high up on the estate there's a little bit of a hot area there. The right kind of soils, we have our Bordeaux. So quite a variety. I tend to tell people, if you think of Lourensford, think right bank Lawrence River, putting it in French terms, because it's exactly that. It's a different climate on the other side of the river. So on the other side, we have Vergelegen and Morgenster, and they're about 8 degrees warmer than us on average. So we make the best of what we have here. And just putting the size in perspective, Lourensford's about half the size of Napa Valley. So we don't have as much vineyards, only 100 hectares, but just to put it in perspective.
It offers you clearly so much as a winemaker, all the varietals, the different microclimates you have. Is that also a challenge, though, and that you've now got to manage all these different characteristics, manage all these opportunities, and decide what to use, what to make the best of?
It is, but it's a challenge I love. We're not just making one wine. We're not just making Sauvignon Blanc. We're not just making Chardonnay. Although our biggest planting and our Euro white varietal is Chardonnay. On the red side, I would say it's Merlot. But it's a great challenge to look at all the different sites and make the best of it. And we can make a variety of great wines on this side.
Take me back to the very, very start, because you've been here since the beginning. How did it kick off? What was the vision when Lourensford first began as a wine producer?
In the beginning, we had a bigger vision, bigger plantings. We planted up to 350 hectares. And we quickly realized that not all the sites are suited for vineyards. And we basically, in 20 years, fitted in 400 years of history. France had 400 years plus to do it. We did it in 20 years. We had to pull some vineyards in areas which is just too windy. We've got sites up higher up on the farm that gets 70 kilometers an hour wind, when it's the southeast is blowing. So we had to learn very quickly what worked and what not, and what remained is what we can focus on now and what we can grow into a greater brand.
And it's a brand that speaks to the whole range of wine that you've spoken of. I know we've got several of them that we're going to try out. The first thing we're going to have a look at, though, is some bubbles. And he looks like such a nice guy, doesn't he? He looks like he's warm and friendly, and you'd quite happily have him babysit your kids. He's not, because the first thing he did was forced me outside, gave me a large saber, and said, right, open the bubbles for me. So this was about 20 minutes ago, a rather nervous Dan. So the art of sabrage. We won't tell them that was the 13th take.
No, that was brilliant. And you can see some of the poor epic riders still heading home in the background there, so in this blistering heat.
Which I want to ask you about. The reason we've got the bubbles going is not just to taste where we are and to taste being at Lourensford, but also it is the first day of the Epic. The race village is back here again. And you were a very passionate mountain biker. I know you ride Wine to Wales. Epic and Harvest don't always sit nicely together. But you had the chance not just to start the race this morning, but then to overtake all the pros and go and watch them at the top.
I did take a shortcut though. But I put the challenge out there for myself to start the race this morning and then head up on this side of the mountain. They climbed on the other side, and to meet them up and to see some of our favorite riders. My daughter is a very, very keen supporter of Mariska Strauss and Candice Lil. So that's her team that she's shouting for. So it was my job to get up there, shout for them, ring a bell and shoot a video for them, and then chase back down again to see them finish and get there before they do.
Winelands are primarily for grapes, but there are a fair number of people who would tell you that no, the winelands are actually made for mountain biking, because in and amongst the vines, from this side all the way through to the Banhook Valley and all around, it's hard to think of better mountain biking territory in the world.
It is. It's probably the top spot in the world for mountain biking, and it's so great to have the Epic back here. We're proud to host them. And for me as a mountain biker, obviously having the best riders here. Matt Beers paid me not to ride this year. He said,
he was under pressure. I'm
better off making wine. And it is the end of our season, so I am tired, but not of mountain biking, of winemaking. But it's probably one of the top sites in the world. And interestingly enough, if you connect all the roads on Lourensford in one straight line, it's 1,000 kilometers.
So you could have your own Lourensford Epic.
Yeah, we probably can.
All right. When you do have it, I'm not available. But when you're tasting wine, I certainly am. So let's do some of that. You spoke earlier about the different France-like elements you have around the estate. One of those you mentioned was champagne. This is what we've got. You got a rather nice accolade, didn't you? Was it last year or the year before for your 10-year-old bubbles, the vintage wine section?
Yes, we did at the Amarim Awards. We won the top award there for our. It was a 8-year-old matured on the lees, which is something quite interesting. It was a Brut Zero, and every good year I keep some bottles back and I let it age to see, just to see the potential and the aging potential. And it was one of those that I believe it was the Cuvée 108, so it matured for 108 months on the lees. And then another 3 years on the cork, and it was showing beautifully.
And rewarding the patience of that investment, because it's not a small amount of time to keep some wine for.
No, of course, it's a work of passion. It's one of my great passions, making Cap Classique. So I'm certainly in love with the process, because it's challenged me as a winemaker, not only on the creative side but also on the scientific side, because with making Cap Classique there's no margin for error. So you've got to do everything exactly right. And the bubble is sometimes unforgiving, so it will show everything, all the good things and the bad things. So yeah.
All right. Well, we've got some here. So cheers, and thank you for the welcome.
Welcome.
And such a beautiful space to be drinking wine.
What a privilege to be up here. I think we should light a
afternoon.
fire and do the sunset here.
Forget about the rest of the epic. As we taste it, tell me a little bit about this particular one and the story behind it.
So it's our Brut Blanc. It's a 2017 vintage. For our Brut Blanc, we aged for at least 50 months on the lees. It's a blend of Chardonnay with about 14 to 15% Pinot Noir. Blended together. There's a touch of oak in there, and for me, it just captures what Lourensford is as an estate. We get that influence from Fralsbury, that cool sea breeze coming in, and you pick up a bit of crushed oyster shell, that kind of flavors, but also a bit of liminess in there. I use 2 Chardonnay sites, one sitting at the entrance of the estate, and then one higher up, more sandy soils, more loamy soils, that gives a bit more character to the wine, and then obviously with the Pinot Noir. But it is like you said, we age it for quite long, but that's just part of the passion, is to keep it to the exact right time where the wine will show its best.
We often talk about wine in a sense of place, and you inferred that, Lourensford. For me, it's also the place where you consume it. And drinking this while I look out over that spread of a horizon down to False Bay, this is sitting very nicely in this particular place.
Exactly. Yeah, we just need some oysters.
We do indeed. All right, so this is some of the Cap Classique, which is our kickoff. I unfortunately have to be on stage tonight, so I am consuming rather modestly, not having the strength of a winemaker. It's one of several wines. Hannes brought about 30 wines up here, so we're going to get stuck into them. The next one we've got on the list that you'd like us to try.
Yeah, so the next one is our Dome Sauvignon Blanc. The reason why I bought the Dome Sauvignon Blanc, the Dome is the highest peak on the Helderberg, and we're sitting right below it. All the epic riders climbed up on the other side, not the entire dome though, but to the neck up there. And we're sitting in the Sauvignon Blanc vineyard as well, where this wine came from.
Fabulous.
So yeah, let me pour you.
I was wondering about that, where you what that name meant, and were you perhaps a Stephen King fan and you'd watched the TV show extensively, but I'm glad it's something more meaningful.
Yes, no. So something interesting with this wine is it's a selection of the top rows of the vineyard up here. And something with Sauvignon Blanc that's quite important to us as well. Sauvignon Blanc always has to have a view over the ocean. And it benefits from that cool sea breeze. For us, the benefit is lower pHs, higher natural acidity. So I can pick at the exact right ripeness level, sugar level, and then still have all the natural acidity to keep the wine together. A few interesting things I do with this wine. Experimenting a little bit as well, and running out of space in the cellar forced me to freeze about 200 log boxes of this in a container, And the reason why I did it as well, not only running out of space, but when you freeze a berry, you can imagine the water inside of the cells of the berry will expand, and it will break open the cells and release a bit more flavor and a bit more structure as well. And that's about 25% of this wine was made in that way. And
how did you? I mean, that's real mad scientist stuff. Was that just you wake up at 3 a.m. in a blaze of genius, or is that something that has been done before?
It has been done before. I think it's one. There we go.
All right. Apologies for that slight delay. When you're halfway up a mountain, occasionally technology will get the better of you. So we've just finished 3 wines while you were away. But let's go back to the Sauvignon Blanc. And it was a New Zealand trick, the freezing of the grapes.
I believe so, and I was intrigued to try it as well, and I was amazed with the result. It just gave me more structure in the wine. It gave me more little bit of tannin even. And the first time I did it, we pressed for about 5 days because I defrosted it too slow, and putting all that frozen grapes in the press was a bit like a slush puppy. So I think
probably the greatest slush puppy ever,
of course,
but still
yes.
a slush puppy.
But we quickly learned. We just did it last week again. And yeah, so about 25% of the wine was made that way. Then something else I do is we've got a 600-liter polyethylene egg shaped in the shape of an egg, and I wanted to bring the terroir closer to the wine. And that was one of those 3 o'clock in the morning things. So how do I want to make wine in the vineyard almost. So I thought, well, okay, the only thing I can do is I can take the vineyard to the cellar. So I went up here, picked about 10 rocks from the vineyard, put it straight in the egg, and did the Sauvignon Blanc natural ferment on top of that. So it's literally the wine fermenting on top of the terroir. And that's the natural ferment component in here.
And when you had that versus any sort of control you had, what it might have been like otherwise, how striking was the difference?
It was beautiful for many reasons, which I don't really know. Well, I can't pinpoint it, but fermenting on the rocks maybe gave me more minerality. I would say maybe a bit more structure, but there was definitely more fruitiness in the wine. It could be due to the fermenting in the egg shape. Obviously, it gives off natural movement during the fermentation, stirring up the lees naturally. But there was definitely something going on. But yeah, I'll do my PhD and tell you afterwards.
If you're starting to think I'm with a mad scientist of wine, well, you're pretty right, because we're going to talk about some clay pots in a moment. Before we do that, though, do I see some Chardonnay on the horizon?
Yes, let's do our Chardonnay. Okay, so this is our limited release Chardonnay. It's from a single block. We only make 9 barrels of this. And a few interesting things, again, I do with this. It's made from clone CY95, which expresses a bit more of the pineapple flavors, a little bit more of the tropical side of the Chardonnay scale. But yeah, it's one of those vineyards that you will walk into and you'll see the balance in the vineyard. And I'm very particular on, I always used to tell people, I probably told you as well, wine is made in the vineyard. We all know that story. Wine actually starts in the soil. if the soil is in balance, naturally in balance, and we're trying to move away from chemically correcting things in the soil. If we have a nitrogen deficiency, we put down nitrogen. We rather put down the right cover crop that will put down the right nitrogen.
There we go. I think that's it's probably Michael Fridjon hacking our signal. That's probably what he's up to at the moment. So go back just a moment or two on the Chardonnay.
So the Chardonnay, the vineyard that's just so naturally in balance. Interesting things I do with this, it's about 80% oaked, and only about 30% of that is new oak. For us, it's all about the fruit. The oak should never overpower the wine, should never overpower the fruit. And then again, the 20% unoaked in the egg on top of the rocks again, and just to bring the terroir closer to the wine, or back to the wine even. So, and bring that balance of the soil back. I don't even wash the rocks. I'll just put them inside and we put the juice on top and natural ferment.
I thought I felt a little crunch as I was having that last mouthful. All right. We are currently sitting out on the deck up above Lourensford. It's a wonderful, wonderful spot for a sundowner, for lunch, or a chance just to sit with a really cool winemaker and discuss the wine he's been making here for 20 years. We've run through a few whites already, but we move into something now, and this is a real passion project. Not that the other stuff isn't, but I know this has become something you're really excited about. And we've had you talking about this on the show before, not the specific wine, but the concept. And it seems like you're going on medieval on us with this, because this is making wine in clay pots.
Indeed. We're going back to biblical times again, making wine in clay pots like they used to do. And with this particular one, I went rogue. I threw out all the rule books, and I said, well, how far can I push myself in this setting with what we have? And we had this beautiful young Roussanne vineyard, and I thought, well, that's destined for the clay pots, and not just fermenting it inside and blending it into something else. I decided I want to do a full carbonic fermentation. So if you're not familiar with carbonic fermentation, it is basically putting the whole bunches inside of the clay pot, and filling it quite tightly. And we did this actually last week with the Roussanne. We're putting dry ice pellets in between. That pushes out all the oxygen. So it's an anaerobic environment inside. And then we close it on top, and I leave it. And I would want to tell you that I then go mountain biking or surfing or hiking or on a holiday, but there's still other stuff to do in the winery. But I literally leave it for the Roussanne 1 to 3 months. And I will go to the amphora and take a sniff if it starts bubbling on top, see if I don't smell any off flavors. And then after about a month, I'll look for the longest person with the biggest feet. We do wash his feet though, and we'll put him inside and we'll do one stomping, and then ferment out the last bit of sugars, and then separate the wine from the skins, and then let it age in the amphora. So a few unusual things with the Roussanne full carbonic fermentation, which is probably the first in the world. I don't know of anybody else that's so crazy to do a full carbonic fermentation on white wine in an amphora. But the result is in the glass. You can tell the people what you taste, but it's a white wine made almost like a red wine. So whole bunch on the skins, cold fermentation, left alone, completely natural. And that's, I think the coin phrase is for me, where simplicity is perfection. Because we stepping back and we're we almost want to say the wine makes itself. It's not completely true. I mean, we guide it, but we leave it though, that it can express itself.
For something that probably shouldn't really have worked,
Exactly.
it's come off brilliantly. And it's you speak of simplicity and the process, but there's still a wonderful complexity to the wine. It's lots of different layers as it unfolds. And Roussanne itself is a grape. It's not one we see on its own an awful lot in South Africa, but when it's done right, as you clearly have done, it just offers you so much, and it unfolds as you drink it. And and I love the fact that it throws back to hundreds, thousands of years ago when wine was being made like this by sort of Romans and Greeks and my wife's ancestors in a village somewhere in Mavromaty. And yet, centuries later, that same process with a few tweaks is still paying dividends.
Yeah, I don't know if they had aircon back then, but probably somebody waving at cool or something, or in a cave.
You go to the Chorio, going to the Greek villages, you won't find too much air conditioning there either.
Not sure, but probably in a cave. It's what they've done 2,000 years ago.
In terms of all that you do, and I know we're going to jump onto some red to wrap up in just a moment, but in terms of all that you do, you've earned the right over 20 years here at Lourensford to be imaginative and to follow these sudden urges of, oh, this could be cool and interesting. I get the sense that is as rewarding for you as anything you do, pursuing the sense of adventure that speaks to your mountain biking love as well, and going, hang on, this might work, it might not, but either way, I'm going to give it a try.
Exactly. No, I'll be bored if I can't be creative. I'll be a robot in the cellar. So creativity is what drives me, and continually exploring what the terroir can give us, and expressing that the best I can in a bottle.
Which leads me to two questions as you look back on your 2 decades or thereabouts at Lourensford. With this sense of adventure, where have you really got it wrong? Because those are often the coolest stories. And then where do you look back proudest and say, you know what, this is what I'm all about as a winemaker?
Yeah, I tend to forget or erase all the wrong things.
I'm bringing back the bad memories.
Let's deal with them first. I think there was a few wrong plantings in the wrong sites, and we struggled to get to a point where we just realized, they're not suited for this terroir, for this estate. And we had to move them and just make our focus smaller and smaller until we get to the right mix that works for us. So along the way, obviously a few mistakes, and that's how we learned not to plant in the wrong areas and to do plant in the right areas. And we're having some exciting things in the future as well. We're working on a 20-year replanting project as well, bringing in some Pinot Noir just to the left of us, and which I think it would be ideally suited for the estate as well. We do have some Pinot Noir already, but we're excited to explore a bit on that. And a few right things as well. I started exploring with the Crysalis starting in 2007. And that's we're just growing with that all the time, and it's one of my passion projects that I'm deeply in love with making. Not that you asked me earlier, bring 4 or 5 wines. I said, how can I choose between my children? I love them all.
It did take about an hour to choose the wine that we've gone through, and I'd say no, we can't have 35 different wines, Hannes. We've had some that Roussanne at Claypot. It's such a cool story, and there's such a nice sense of wine history to it. We've gone through a whole range of whites. Let's finish off with our last wine of the day. It's perhaps not ideal red wine drinking weather, but I'm willing to make an exception because I've been looking forward to having this. The Chrysalis, tell me about that.
So the Chrysalis is what basically happened, and that's part of what you just asked, what we've learned and mistakes we've made. I always wanted to capture Lourensford in a red and a white blend. And again, being a bit rebellious, throwing out the rule book out of the window and said, I won't be forced to make a Bordeaux white and Sauvignon with Semillon. Let's see what we can do. So we have a white Chrysalis and a red Chrysalis. But let me tell you the story of the name first, because we came up with a blend, and I was searching desperately for what we can call it that captures the estate into one name. And it was actually one of those lazy Saturday afternoons sitting on the couch, and David Attenborough was on the telly. telling this beautiful story of this butterfly in this forest, and being almost born. It came out of this chrysalis. And I thought that is the perfect name for this wine, because the chrysalis tells the whole story of the metamorphosis of what our wines go through. So we just talked earlier about starting in the soil being changed into a vineyard, you can imagine, and then grapes. The grapes we pick at the optimum time. We take it back to the cellar. We change it into wine during the whole process, aging into barrels, and then a meticulous blend, picking out the top barrels and putting the right blends together. And then for me, the bottle is almost the chrysalis itself. So when you pull the cork, you give birth to that butterfly, and you become part of the story, because that's what we want. Our work group in the cellar is called the Moment Makers, because we believe we're not just making wine, we're making moments. This is one of them. Me and you sitting up here having wine. But then you can imagine this butterfly, a little bit wet, coming out of the chrysalis, sitting on the rim of your glass and drying off its wings, and the wine is breathing a little bit, and it's still changing in the glass. And then that's where you become part of the story, and you become part of that metamorphosis, and you're bringing some food, which is one of my big loves as well, food and wine. That's why we make wine. So it was the perfect name for the white and the red. The white, we don't even put the varietals on the back, because it's not about it. It's about what came together, and almost we created something new, blending the best of the best together. So it's literally going out in the vineyards, picking the best grapes, vinify them separately, and then choosing the best of the barrels and the best of the best to put this wine together. So on the white side, we have a Sauvignon Blanc, about 70%, with about 27% Chardonnay, and a drop of Viognier in there. And beautiful wine. We're currently on the 27 vintage that's showing now well. People think you shouldn't drink an older vintage white wine, but with this climate that I explained, it's actually at its best now. And we're having the 2016 Chrysalis Red, which is a Bordeaux blend, so mainly Cabernet, about 65%. Blended with some of our top Merlot vineyards, and then just about 10% of Cabernet Franc in there.
I love the story behind the name and the philosophy that it embodies as you brought it together. I'm also fascinated by this, because both the heft of the bottle, it's a proper murder weapon of a wine bottle, and also what you say is in there, the Cab Franc, the Merlot, it does suggest that slightly bigger Bordeaux blend, but the temperature and the slightly cooler climate also suggests that you could pull off a blend that is a bit lighter in touch, a little bit more subtle. So was that also a question of what are we doing here to make not just the best of our varietals, the best of our vineyards, but also the best of our conditions, our climate?
Exactly, and it's the climate is probably closer to a real Bordeaux than the rest of Stellenbosch can claim, although they're making great cabs, but it's a cooler climate cab. Driven by Cabernet and the Merlot as well. Our Merlot is more in a Languedoc Pomerol style, so it's probably closer climate-wise to a Bordeaux than most people can claim, and a cool climate Bordeaux blend.
And an absolutely splendid wine on which
Yeah.
to just about wrap up. And even I don't want to wrap up. I'd actually just like to sit here and spend the rest of it looking at that view and talking about wine, and
For sure.
starting up a braai and having a great night. So we can't do that this time. Hopefully we'll do again. Before we do bid all of you farewell from here at Lourensford, you've done so much in 20 years. You've come up with some acts of madness that have proved to be quite inspired, and you've clearly loved getting to know this home of yours and creating wine out of it. Is there anything that's still left to do? Are there any boxes that are yet to be ticked?
There should always be, otherwise there's no place for me anymore, because I want to keep on pushing the boundaries in a gentle way. Keep on exploring. I'll always explore and always experiment. I talked to the guys earlier this vintage, and it was pretty straightforward, and I said, we have to experiment at least with something else. So adding to the Sauvignon Blanc frozen grapes, I froze about 2,000 liters of juice as well. So that's in the cellar. It took me 1 week to defrost a 1,000-liter flow bin. So we'll start fermenting that tomorrow and see what happens. So yeah, we should always explore. Otherwise, you get bored and you get stuck in a rut. So yeah,
always
let's
something
see what
new.
happens.
Which is just another reason, not that I needed one, just another reason to keep coming back to Lourensford and find out what's been happening in what sounds like as much as a laboratory as it is a wine cellar. The results just giving us new expressions, new interpretations of this truly, truly glorious part of the world. We're going to call it a day for this evening. I need to scramble back down the mountain, jump on stage and host this evening's prize game. The end of stage 1 of the Absa Cape Epic. Our race village on the first 2 nights has been at Lourensford. It's a lovely, lovely spot for the riders, but just between you and me, swap the bicycle for a glass of wine and enjoy Lourensford at its very best, even if I've got a mountain biker next to me. Hannes, thank you so much for the hospitality and for bringing me up to this magical little corner of Lourensford.
Thank you, Dan.
This is as much a threat as it is a promise. I shall be back, and I shall look forward to coming back up here, spending a bit more time and finding out what else you've come up with between now and then.
Next time we light that fire and we have a braai up here.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
This has been Dan Really Likes Wine, coming to you live from the very top, or almost, of Lourensford at the end of day 1 of the Absa Cape Epic. Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Pick and Pay. During the course of this week, look out for our magazine show featuring Luke Del Roberts at the Test Kitchen, his brand new restaurant, the Test Kitchen Carbon, which opened just last week. It's already got queues around the block, paying tribute to the original in Woodstock. And we'll also be chatting to the great Michael Fridjon and to Chepang Molisano, one of South Africa's finest young wine writers, as we put box wine to the test. That's right, Michael Fridjon drinking box wine. It has never been seen before. Also join us live again on Thursday. We'll be live from Greyton. Bring the Kleenex, bring the tissues, pour yourself a large stiff drink, because joining me will be Erica Obermeyer, will be Henry Kotzer from Mulder Bosch, Paul Wallace from Paul Wallace Wines, and the great Beyers Truter from Beyers Kloof, as we pay tribute to dogs in wine on the back of, very sadly, the guardian of the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, Stavros the Terrible, our big bull mastiff, who very sadly went to sleep for the last time on Saturday. So tribute to dogs in wine. Expect some great stories coming up on Thursday, as well as some lovely wine and possibly a couple of tears. That does it for now. If you're riding the Epic, good luck for the rest of the week. If you're not, you're far more sensible. Drink wine instead. From Hannes and myself at Lourensford, enjoy the evening and cheers.
Yes,
to join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.